Hello everyone. So here we are starting with the 194S. So this section has been brought in on 1st of July 2022. So this is basically TDS on transactions other than those taking place or through an exchange. So let's start with that and understand what is 194S and when that TDS is required to be deducted. So when we are looking at this section at glance, so this section is applicable on virtual digital asset transactions, and tax is to be deducted with 1% and on consideration value. And for that deduction, the threshold limit given by the department or government is 50,000 or 10,000 as the case may be. So that case I would explain you. Now, section shall be effective from 1st of July. Consideration on transfer of VDA payable to resident, deduct tax at 1% on such consideration, and consideration payable by specified person threshold is 50,000, and for non-specified person the threshold is 10,000. So specified person, the thing which I was talking about, the threshold limit is different for specified and non-specified individuals. So specified person includes individual HUA without business or profession. And if there is turnover does not exceed 1 CR or 50 lakhs as the case may be, in that case, it is the 10,000 limit. Threshold to be seen in the financial year immediately preceding the financial year in which VDA is transferred. Now, let us first understand in brief what the VDA is. So, any information or code or number or token generated through cryptographic means or otherwise with presence of following elements. So, those elements are providing a digital representation of value exchanged with or without consideration, exchanged with the promise or representation of having inherent value, functions as a store of value or a unit of account used in the financial transaction or investment, but not limited to investment scheme. It must be, or it can be transferred, stored, or traded electronically. The presence of above element is necessary to be covered under the terms VDA. So non-fungible token or other similar nature or any other digital asset, this has to be specified by the government, specifically via notifications. So now the taxability, if we come to taxability part, then the income on transfer of VDA shall be taxable at the rate of 30% under 1515 BBH of the IT Act. It is effective from 1st of April. Although the tax liability has been implied from 1st of April, but the TDS section that has been brought in from 1st July. So income head will be depending on the nature of transaction. For example, until now as a general practice, it was being considered as a capital asset making capital gain thereon. However, since VDA has been defined under a separate clause of 147A of section 2, it is clear that it won't be taxable under the head capital gain. Instead, it shall be taxable under income from other sources. And gifting of VDA is also in the picture. So if we gift this, so it has been included within the scope whereby transfer of cryptocurrency without or with inadequate consideration shall also be taxable in the hands of recipient under the income from other sources. So there are some restrictions. Following restrictions have been placed on VDA. No expenses other than cost of purchase can be claimed. Loss from transfer of VDA can't be carried forward to the next financial year. Loss can't be set off against the income. However, whether the loss from transfer of VDA can be set off against the income from VDA in the same year is still unclear. Now there are some sort of transactions which I would explain you with a diagram which I have prepared. So VDA is owned by, there are different type of transactions. When VDA is owned by a person other than exchange, and when VDA is owned by the exchange itself. I would take that separately. So now coming to this 194Q, few points are there which we need to understand. Like 194Q would not be applicable when tax deducted under 194S. Payment gateway to take an undertaking from the buyer regarding withholding of taxes. Threshold limit 50,000, 10,000 shall be considered from 1st April to 2022. So threshold limit would be calculated from 1st April itself. However, the TDS would get deducted from 1st of July only. Now, Form 26QE is reporting of VDA transfer by specified person. 24 QF is furnishing of quarterly statement of VDA transaction executed on the exchange. So these are the points which we need to take it in the 194S sections. So now I just want to share another screen with you all, wherein I would explain you the different guidelines which have been provided by the department or government. So question one, which has been brought in by most of the assessees, are like, who is required to deduct tax when the transfer of VDA is taking place on or through an exchange and payment is made by the purchaser to the exchange directly or through broker. Then from the exchange it goes to seller directly or through the broker. So basically, just like 194 IA, the buyer is required to deduct TDS at the rate of 1% on the consideration value. But now if we just take a picture of the same, so transfer takes place or through an exchange, and the VDA being transferred is owned by a person other than the exchange. So this is one situation where VDA is not owned by the exchange. So purchase is in cash and purchase is in cash. The situation is like the purchase is in cash. So buyer and seller, there are two parties. One is buyer and another is seller, and exchange is the marketplace. So what buyer will do, they will do the payment to exchange, and then exchange would make the payment to seller. Okay, so it is the exchange responsibility to deduct 1% TDS. Basically, it is the responsibility of buyer, but again, since the small vendors, since the small buyers are involved, so it is not possible to comply with all the TDS compliances and everything at that point of time, and for those buyers as well. So exchange has been given the responsibility to deduct TDS and pay to the seller. So government can easily capture the exchange, being the big player in trading. Liability is of buyer to deduct TDS, but the circular focused on the exchange. So here we can understand easily that even if the responsibility is of buyer to deduct TDS, but the government has focused on exchange, being the bigger player in the transactions which is happening in between buyer and seller. So they will be the responsible entity or person who will deduct TDS and pay to the seller. Now, when broker is involved in transaction, so the situation where the buyer is not dealing with the seller directly or through exchange, there another party which is called broker. So buyer is the one purchaser, exchange is the purchaser one, and broker is the purchaser two, because the transactions are happening via exchange and broker. So in the given case also, written agreement between buyer and seller is required, wherein broker, because there are different parties acting as a buyer, so it is responsibility of buyer. So to make it more clear, an agreement is advisable between buyer and broker and exchange, like who is liable to deduct TDS on behalf of the buyer while paying the amount to the seller directly. Now case 2, where the VD is owned by the exchange itself. So now the buyer is, what they are doing, they are just doing the payment to the exchange, and exchange seller marketplace is transferring the VDA to the buyer. So general provision says that buyer is liable to deduct TDS, but government provides two options here, that buyer will deduct TDS and file TDS return. If specified person, then no time is required. Other than specified person, obviously 26Q can be filed. Okay, so option one is that, and option two is exchange will pay the TDS and file the TDS returns, file the ITR, show this income, buyer will not be buyer will not be the defaulter. So in that case, what will happen, the buyer and seller both are different entities. One is buyer and another is exchange. So exchange on behalf of the buyer can pay the TDS and just file the returns, and that exchange will pay the TDS and file the TDS return and file the ITR, show this income, and buyer will not be a defaulter. Now case 3 over here, his transaction is in kind, wherein exchange is in between buyer and the seller, and buyer, suppose A is the party, B is the party. What A is doing, A is transferring the crypto of 100 to exchange, and exchange on behalf of the buyer transferring that seller transferring that crypto to B. So what exchange will do, exchange will keep one crypto and transfer 99 crypto to party B. And in the same way, party B who is transferring 100 NFT to this exchange will keep the 1 NFT and transfer 99 NFT to A. So in the given situation, both buyer and seller are A and B. Like A and B are acting both as buyer and seller. So as per the law, both A and B are liable to deduct TDS being the buyer. So again, practically not possible for the buyer to just deduct TDS in both the cases. So both the parties shall pay TDS at the rate of 1%, option 1, which is again not possible. And exchange shall deduct the TDS of both the parties and file TDS returns like 26Q. So 1% of NFT value on say 100 rupees. So that will be 1% of 100 rupees will be the TDS for X, and 1% of crypto say Y will be the TDS for Y. So in that way, they can transact this crypto. So other guidelines which were provided were like, let me just go you let me just allow you all through these points which we have discussed. So we have already covered these guidelines. One was who is required to deduct TDS, and when the transfer of VDA is taking place or through an exchange, this we have already covered. And in a case where transfer of VDA take place through a broker other than exchange, and when in case where the transfer of VDA takes place or through an exchange and the VDA being transferred is owned by such exchange, so the ownership is also with the exchange. So now the question was with respect to transactions where the consideration of transfer of VDA is not in kind. However, will this operate in a situation where it is in kind or in exchange of another VDA? This also we discussed with the diagram, like how it will work. The exchange will keep the crypto or NFT on behalf of the parties and convert that in the specified rate on that date, and pay TDS at the rate of 1% on such values and file the TDS returns. Now, the fourth question was like whether the consideration for transfer of VDA shall be on gross basis after including GST commission, or it shall be on net basis after exclusion of these items. So basically, the TDS will be applicable on the non-GST part, like the net consideration without GST. So this is very simple. And now next, move to next question, that is, in transactions where payment is being carried out through payment gateways, there may be tax deduction twice. To illustrate that, a person XYZ is required to make payment to the seller for transfer of VDA. He makes payment of 1 lakh rupees through digital platform of ABC. On these facts, liability to deduct tax under section 194S of the Act may fall on both XYZ and ABC. Is tax required to be deducted by both? So to make and clarify this, in order to remove the difficulty, it is provided that in the above example, the payment gateway will not be required to deduct tax under section 194S of the Act on a transaction if the tax has been deducted by the person required to make deduction under section 194S of the Act. So hence in the above example, XYZ has deducted tax under section 194S of the Act on 1 lakh rupees. ABC will not be required to deduct any sort of tax in under 194S. And to facilitate a proper implementation, ABC may take an undertaking from XYZ regarding deduction of tax. Now, this point I have already clarified, like the limit will be limit of 50,000 or 10,000 would be considered from 1st of April, that is throughout the financial year. So threshold will be considered from 1st of April. However, the TDS would be applicable only after 1st of July, when the TDS section got implemented by the government. So that's all. I think there is a summary of 194S when it got applicable, that is 1st July 2022, and who is required to deduct TDS, buyer or exchange, to be deducted on what? Purchase value consideration of VTA, transaction value in cash or in kind. On both, TDS would be applicable. TDS rate is 1%. No TDS if the aggregate value would not be more than 50,000 in a fiscal year in case of specified person, and 10,000 in case of non-specified person. So that's all. I think we can just wrap up this, and to conclude, 194S is applicable on VDA payment on consideration, and specified threshold limits needs to be crossed to get it applicable. and the government has more majorly focused on exchange to comply with these transactions. So that's all. Thank you.